from Tunisia until not so long ago. But these days, we have discovered that the truth was in strong suspicion not only in Tunisia. In fact, a quick observation of North Africa and of the Middle East would easily prove that what was called true is actually in strong suspicion for the whole area, except, of course, Israel. The questionable truth is that Tunisia is, or rather was, a democracy, under the well-tested principle that any country which obeys the dictates of the United States or the IMF is by definition a democratic country. Or better, a country is called democratic when there are no restrictions, rules or regulations regarding trade, where possibly there are no social services provided, and where foreign and preferably US corporations and the IMF, of course, have unlimited access and opportunities to do what they like, what they want under the auspices of a privileged elite, maybe less than 1% of the whole population. And it's a privileged elite that ensures that all the profit that they themselves can reap from this unholy alliance remains secured and firm in their own hands. This was, and would have continued to be the conditions that apply to Tunisia. But every now and then in history, as much as in the life of individuals, something unexpected occurs to shatter the best formulated plans. Now listen to how Tunisia was described only recently by a journalist in the magazine Vanity Fair. And I read, "Tunisia is one of Africa's most outstanding success stories. It was ranked #1 in Africa for economic competitiveness, even incidentally outpacing 3 European states. Home ownership is 80%. Life expectancy is the highest on the continent, 72 years. Less than 4% of the population is below the poverty line. 9 out of 10 households are connected to electricity and clean water. Tunisia is the first African state to have been accepted as an associate member of the European Union. Tunisia was the first in the Arab world to abolish polygamy and to ban the veil and the burqa. The country makes delicious wine and even exports it to France. There were moments," the journalist says, "as I was loafing around the beautiful seaside towns when the combination of stylish females, excellent food and clean streets made me feel I was in a place more upscale than many European recreational resorts. An old friend told me Tunisia is a country where even the Islamists, or Islamists if you like, are highly civilized." And so on with the flattery. Now these are clear lies for public consumption, but as Bassanio says in The Merchant of Venice, "So may the outward shows be list themselves, the world is still deceived with ornament." It is true that the country as a whole is in abject poverty, but they are, or rather were, democratic until recently, according to the official US standards. I say official because unofficially the administrations were fully aware that democracy was a facade put up for the benefit of the minute section of the US public interested in international affairs. Now, the journalist John Pilger aptly commented that there are now 2 genuine powers in the world. One is, of course, the United States power. But world public opinion, or perhaps world decency, is waking up. And in this context, WikiLeaks has triggered something. Some kind of genie has been let out of the bottle, and it cannot be easily stuffed back into it. And world opinion, when it stirs, when it starts to come together collectively, it starts to do things that are important to us all. It is a very, very formidable opponent to those totalitarian people who still insist in calling themselves democratic. And that, in a sense, is what happened in Tunisia. True, the actual trigger to what seems clearly a revolution rather than a coup, the trigger was, as you know, a 22-year-old man burning himself alive for being denied to sell his wares in a street so as to fight off at least his own poverty. But the fuel had already been accumulated and prepared with the help of WikiLeaks. And even policy specialists in Washington described the events in Tunisia as the first WikiLeaks revolution. WikiLeaks has made public several cables from the US Embassy in Tunis, all signed by the US Ambassador Robert Godek. Their contents rebuts the lie regularly circulated by the American media that the documents released by WikiLeaks are inconsequential and reveal nothing new, or that they even put US diplomacy in a favorable light. In fact, the cables contain exposure of the corruption of the Tunisian regime, as well as the US nod and wink approach towards torture in a country's prisons. They expose the fraud of Washington's pretense of support for democracy and human rights around the world. Several cables make evaluations of the regime, commenting on the health of the president, which now we can call the ex-president, the corruption of his family, particularly of his in-laws, and the US options for shaping Tunisia's future after the departure of the current and, as I said, now past president. One now notorious dispatch, if you have read it, is headlined "Corruption in Tunisia. What's yours is mine," and I read. And it gives detail of the doings of the family, including at least 10 known siblings of the First Lady and their children, as well as of 7 siblings of the President and his children. And nearly every significant business in Tunisia, the dispatch reports, every significant business in Tunisia involves a member of this extended family, and he adds, whether it is cash, services, land, property, or yes, even your yacht or boat, it belongs to the president. The content of the cables demonstrates why the US government was so furious about the leaks, and why it is seeking, as you know, to prosecute Assange and to halt WikiLeaks exposures. The revelations have had a definite political impact in undermining what is now, as I said, the ex-president's regime in Tunisia, and in contributing to the mass demonstration that eventually ousted the dictator. Far from the exposure of the US diplomatic secrets representing no real threat to US imperialist interests, the events in Tunisia show that the WikiLeaks revelations can, under conditions of mounting social and political crisis and explosive class tensions in every part of the world, really, they can seriously damage Washington's so-called geostrategic position. And the internet played a major role not only in creating the political climate, but also in the organization and mobilization of the mass movements in Tunisia. In fact, the Tunisian people have used Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking sites to organize and direct the mobilization against the regime. In King Henry VIII, the regime caused by the policies of Cardinal Wolsey had caused quite a bit of distress. And we find the lines, "The spinners, carders, fullers, weavers, unfit for other life, compelled by hunger and lack of other means, in desperate manner daring even the event of to the teeth, are all in uproar. Change a few words in those lines, and that is precisely what happened in Tunisia. The quote to guess in the last episode was, "Within this wall of flesh, there is a soul that counts thee her creditor." The quote is extracted from the play King John. And King John, in this instance, thanks his assistant and collaborator Hubert for his contribution to the happy outcome for the English army in the Battle of Angers in France. One of these endless episodes of the 100-year war, actually more than 100 years, to be precise, from 1337 to 1453, a war conducted, as you know, between England and France to make sure that freedom and democracy would be established for good on French soil. The first viewer to send in the correct quote was Mr. Rod Hagel, and Mr. Hagel will receive, as usual, another of our transparent LCDs, dual-purpose travel and display, alarm, chronometer, calendar, and stopwatch given to the first viewer who sends in the correct quote to us. Now, the quote to guess for this episode is, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." And I repeat, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Where does the quote come from? Send a reply to jimmy@dailyshakespeare.com, as you see on the screen. Also, please note the change in email address. And furthermore, as usual, please write Shakespeare on the subject line so I do not inadvertently erase your reply, your message, your guess. Our program is rebroadcast several times a week during the month on channels 21 and on channel 11, as you can see on the screen. And the program's broadcast schedule for this and other program is also found at the site of this station. And as you can see, I leave for a few seconds the schedule on the screen. Very well. Now we have excuse me. I'm sorry. Where was I? Yeah, I show you the check of the screen. Now then, all the as I mentioned I should say, all the quotes and mentioned this evening, and 10,000 more are found in this book, which I happen to have written, Your Daily Shakespeare, an arsenal of verbal weapons to drive your friends into action and your enemies into despair. And for more information, connect at the site www.dailyshakespeare.com. Now I will thank my kind, patient, skilled crew and managers and trainers at TVC TV. We wish you all a happy February, a happy Valentine's Day, and of course, may all the number of your stars give light to thy fair way. Good night.